Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Government Cheese Time featuring our guest, Mike Pearson, the Global Brand Director for Zodiac Watches. Just another Government Cheese Time episode where we interview someone who loves watches and does some cool stuff in it. The Government Cheese Time is brought to you by the Anti-Watch Watch Club, a 501c3 charity that utilizes a drop-style culture to support veterans, law enforcement officers, and first responders. They provide monetary, social, humanitarian, and emotional support to those in need. And they do it through cool stuff like Nalgene bottles, flags like the one behind me, T-shirts, you name it, shorts, rash guards for people that
rash guards,
and do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, hopefully not at the same time. And check out Anti-Watch Watch Club and support them because they support a bunch of great charities. So how's everybody doing? How you doing?
Doing good, man. I'm doing good. Got out of work. Sunny is hot today in Kansas. Is over 100. So yeah.
How you doing, Mike? Welcome.
I'm good as gold. I'm looking something, especially in this shirt. I'm going to apologize to every one of the people who are watching this because I did not realize that I was wearing this shirt, but it's Hawaiian Thursday here in the office. So I went to town with the flamingo shirt. This is not my daily attire, but I'm trying my best.
There's a lot of good contrast going on over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Ship lap in the back. Chip lap and flamingos.
I'm in the boardroom. I'm in the Fossil HQ boardroom. I've come to the big room for you guys.
Nice.
Mostly because the Wi-Fi is okay here. So.
Yeah, that's why we're doing what we're doing too. Well, let's get straight into it, Mike. We usually do a wrist check. We try to remember to do them at the beginning of the show. And since you're the guest of honor, what do you have on your wrist today?
I've got a Zodiac on. It's probably my favorite watch from last year. It is the Pro Diver in titanium limited edition. It was everything that's good about the brand. It was only 282 of them were made. It was the first time we'd done a whole grade 2 titanium watch, and it sold out pretty quickly. But this lume on this bad boy is supernova. So when you see it, when you're coming from this Texas sunshine, it is shining.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Nice.
What do you got on wrist, Alex?
I got my Tissot Sea Star on a Ericus Original.
Oh, nice.
And couldn't go with bracelet today because it was, like I said, over 100. So I was trying to go with a little bit more.
I'm staying loyal to the bracelet, even sweat. I'm wearing my Zodiac Zulu Oscar 9271 two-tone compression case. This thing, the gilding on the bezel insert on this thing, and then the applied Zodiac logo at the 12 o'clock. Those things in video and photography, when the light hits them just right, like I'm doing the hand little gift thing or whatever. It's just, I get tons of compliments on this piece all the time. It's super comfortable. I love it. And it's just the right amount of class. So,
yeah. It is.
Do you want to hear something quite unique about that watch as well?
Oh, I'm listening.
Let's hear it.
It's gone. It's going to be sunset for a while. So you've got a special edition there. We've got some plans coming up. So if you see that in a store or you see it online, get it because we're not making it anymore. We do that from time to time, but for you to have that, I mean, I got one just before I knew we were getting rid because I knew it was so cool.
It's such a it's comfortable on wrist. The bracelet's super comfortable. It's just, I mean, everything's just right. Balanced really well. Sits on top of the wrist nice. The lug-to-lug's good. But I'm telling you, that gilding on the bezel insert. I mean, you can just look at that in different light all the time, and it's amazing. It's just amazing. Yeah. So now I feel even more special than I felt before.
Goodness.
You're good.
I'm so sorry. Technical difficulties.
Because we can edit and we can edit streamer, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can edit.
Where were we at? We did the wrist check. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, well, now that we've done the wrist check, Mike, let's get straight into you because people aren't here to hear us run our mouth. They're here to learn about Zodiac and what the watch brand brings to the community, especially our military and veteran community.
I appreciate you saying that. I think the Zodiac name has meant so much to the military community over a lot of its time in the industry. But I would say it really started off in the 50s when the Seawolf came out. And this year we're celebrating 70 years of that Seawolf. It was a watch that was the first commercially available dive watch. It went to 300 meters. It came out the same year as the Blancpain 50 Fathoms. It came out before the Submariner. And I think the aesthetics that it had, it really suited an age of people wanting to discover the oceans more than what they had done before. And it was a tall watch that could be trusted. And I think that's why it came out to be such a big thing for the military. It was trusted by the Swiss military as well as the American side of it, especially what the US Armed Forces were going through from the 50s, 60s, and 70s through Vietnam and Korea. It ended up being a really wonderful tool for a lot of those service people in all factions of the military. So you find the Navy, you know, you had the doctors and the officers. The Seawolf looked so good in their stripes and their and everything that they were wearing. But you've also got those proper deep divers who were doing the saturation dives for the first time, and they were trusting one of our 68 divers in the 60s or the Seawolf in the 50s. And then you look at the Army and what they were doing. It was a tool watch that could be trusted and reliable. It also was legible. And the images that I've seen, especially over the last year and a half since joining the brand, have humbled me of probably where the watch has been. And also you see some of these watches today that I think after the 80s, when it was sold to a couple of different corporations, that name maybe went down probably from where it deserved to be. But you see some of the resurgence of some of these older pieces. And I've had collectors coming up to me that have shown me this watch that maybe they've purchased, or I've been lucky enough to find watches that have been passed down from father to son or grandfather to son to grandson. And you see on the back of the watches where it went, who wore it, their service number and the dates that it was worn. And you know that this particular brand, maybe more than many others, has a real history and affiliation with the military. And I think that's, when I joined the brand, it was a really important thing that, and I say this with respect to the company that owns the brand, it was always known quite in a fun way, because from the 90s into the early 2000s, there was a lot of colorful variations of Zodiac and a lot of interpretations of what Zodiac was known for, which color is a big part, even through the military times. But I think of us now as custodians to this name. And so for 100 years, it was owned by a family. For 30, 40 years, maybe it was up and down. But what the watch meant through its prime, 50s, 60s, and 70s, is unmatched in my eyes. And so what we're trying to do now is build a watch and build a brand that's deserving of the name, that can tell those stories. And I don't think we're there yet, but I definitely think we're on the right track. And when I tell these stories, or I talk about our qualities, I talk about our movements and the respect of the design, no matter of the color, that it feels like a Zodiac. It's wonderful to see I would say the reaction, and that it's like not a relief, but you guys get it. And that's huge when you can see an owner or someone who's on the fence of owning it, or have seen the name from maybe their father, or knowing of what it meant through the 50s to the 70s. They go, wow, okay, this is doing the right thing now. We can invest maybe money or time, but more than anything, we can invest our attention to you. And whatever comes after that, I'm happy about. But it's been one hell of a ride the last year and a half to kind of get it onto that path.
I know it's captured Alex's attention.
Oh,
Hi, Alex.
100%. I'm telling you, like it's I'm just fawning over everything, you know. It's
Do you have a favorite? Which one have you seen that you like the most?
So I'll tell you, the Seacron and that colorway that is with the black and blue. Yeah. It's just it does a lot. It does a lot. And it's one of the things that I told Jason before. One of the biggest sins committed in my household is that I still to own a Zodiac.
That's all right. You know a guy.
Yeah. The biggest issue I have is picking and choosing.
Yeah.
What it's hard because I'll swing so much. One day I'll be like, okay, I think this is the right way to go, and then another release will come out, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, we've the way that we've built the brand, and this is over the last few years before I joined them, with these really cool limited editions, great colorways, great partnership watches. And so finding a Zodiac you liked was very, very seldom, because you'd get one drop, we might make 40 or 80 of them, and then it would be gone. And so I'll wait to the next one. So what we've done in the last year and a half, well, it's basically taken some of the things from the year or two before, where we've built a few, and we've kind of put together this core collection that tells 6 major stories, mostly dive oriented, but we've got second time zones, but we still keep those limited editions. And that's where we had to go, because we want to not have confusion from you, but we want to give the audience choices. Because before it would be like, oh, I like that really cool purple watch they did with Liberty of London, but it's gone now. What do I do next? At least we want someone to come into a showcase and say, there are 6 stories, which color suits me? But what we've tried to do, and this is probably a more military type thing, is that even though The original Seawolves you could have got for what, 69 to $100, or if you're an officer, you would have been given one. These ones are comparably so in today's market attainable. So you think that we start at under $1,000. Nothing really goes over $2,000 apart from the Seacron and our left-hand drive. But the average price point of a Zodiac is $1,500, and that's a good chunk of change. But if you think about the different brands that we talk about that are military inspired and they're all around the $5,000 to $10,000 mark, that's not military wages. That's not entry level pricing.
No.
So we know that we're in a very weird space in terms of pricing, but I think that's why we can produce some good colorways, because you might not like the color of this bezel, but this model in black sings to you because it is robust, it is strong, but it's got a bit of personality, or you might have some really cool hair like Jason does, and you want to show a little bit of finesse in life, like your little bit of gold gilt. Go for it. We offer it. Yeah, you do.
And it's crazy though, Mike, that you bring that up, because this is the only piece of gold jewelry I've ever owned in my entire life.
Oh man,
I've never been a gold guy. You know what I mean? Like my wedding band is tantalum. Like I've never owned gold jewelry because it's never been something I've really been into. And then getting my 9209, the military collaboration that you guys did with Hodinkee.
Yeah. When
I did the whole article on that, that's a family watch. I mean, me, T, and my wife, we each have one, and my wife loves them. It's all the stuff you say. It's highly legible. It's symmetry's down. The build quality is great. Like T takes his everywhere. He surfs with it, windsurfs.
Yeah, I love his pictures, man.
Yeah, he goes and does the work.
Yeah,
he takes the timepiece with him to do the work, and that made this so much easier to wear, because I'm like, it's a compression style case, vice the skin diver case, but I know the build quality's there, and then the design. I can't remember the designer's name, but when I was in Worn and Wound, I had the chance to talk
Ryan
to
White. Yeah.
I made sure he knew, man. Like I have no idea what I'm talking about, because I'm not an art school major, but I was like, man, like it's tight. It's just really tight.
If you sit down and have a beer with Ryan and I, which we will do in the future, you'll know he's as big as a geek as I am, or as a lot of your listeners might be. Is that I've told this story on a few podcasts over the years. Is one of my biggest example of understanding what Zodiac is that when I first started, it was just after Worn and Wound released that Saved by the Bell watch. The crazy, it looked like flecks of paint everywhere, Alex. It was like 90s colors. And they sold out like that. And I never forget having a meeting with the Worn and Wound guys. And they were like, well, we spent months on this photography and months on this imagery, and it just sold out. We didn't get a chance to show it. And I'm like, but did you talk about the compression? Did you talk about the hands and numerals of where the design came from? Because if you, maybe going back to your point, if you look through the color, you'll see Zodiac. And that's what Ryan does for your particular watch, what it did with that craziness in the wind-up watch or the Worn and Wound watch. But I think that's what a lot of the people are now seeing, is that even if it has hints of orange or gold, or if it has hints of playfulness, shall we say, it still should feel like a Zodiac. And that for me is the biggest compliment. I mean, the Pro Diver series that we've got, that was very colorful a couple of years ago, just before COVID and through COVID. And we didn't make many of the big colors. And we lost our bezel supplier during COVID. And so now we've only got the very military-esque styles, which is black. And then we've got a DLC case with a left-hand drive. But the colors will come back, because if you look through it, it's still a Pro Diver. And it's 300-meter dive watch, ISO certified. It's a beast. And like I said, the lume's awesome. But that's the hope. By the end of next year especially, which we can get into in detail, this brand will be so much better. Internally, we've got more techniques on the outside. We're using really good materials. But this process is all taken from what Zodiac used to be. Legibility, credibility, strength, longevity, and good design. At the end of it, it's just got to look good.
Yeah, I know, because me and Alex talked the other day, and we were supposed to have the discussion about it on the show, and I think we ended up having like a 25-minute discussion about the Seacron before we ever hit record, because it was like, because his is the dark blue to the fade, not a fume, but fade like the ocean. And then mine was the panda. And I was like, man, these things,
the reverse panda.
Reverse panda.
It's important that we say that.
Yeah.
And we said before we press record, there's a certain mythology around Zodiac that's sometimes a bad part in Northern California. There was also a mythology that he was wearing our watches, and he wasn't. He's just all about the cipher and the logo. But in the movie, he was wearing a white dial chronograph, and it wasn't a Zodiac. We wouldn't allow that. But just to respect anybody who might have lost their lives or been affected by it, we reverse pandered that watch to make sure there was nothing tied to anything. So that's why I bought that watch. So
that's pretty cool.
We do think about stuff like that. So
yeah, that is pretty cool. And I'll tell you, you were talking about the left-hand drive, and I remember when that watch came out. I remember in one of the episodes of my podcast, I was talking about how much I wanted a GMT Diver bezel.
Yeah,
and I remember it was literally like 5 days later that the Zodiac watch release, and I was like, wait, is someone listening to my conversation?
That fast. You're that good.
Exactly. Yeah. I was like, this is out of control.
The best line I had about that was we had some guy in one of the retail stores. He goes, why do I need a GMT on my dive watch? Because there's only a small GMT hand in the middle. And it was because we designed it with Andy Mann in mind, who's one of our ambassadors. Yeah. And he goes, I need a GMT. Why would you use it? You're not underwater. Because I'm out of the water more than I'm in it, and I'm never at home. So that GMT dive watch, it made sense. And that was the first time I'd looked at it and goes, I want one of these. It was great. So
I know a lot of military guys want them too. I mean, because, a lot of times especially if you're at a command where you're traveling all the time, because there are commands where you're flying and you're going back and forth, and your family's in California or wherever they're at, you want to have it to the time zone where your family's at. So
it is the only complication that matters, no matter what we say. I mean, I love the Seacron for what it is, and I love the fact that the chronograph runs like it does. But if you were going to be probably in the military world, but also my family's in England, I'm not military, but if I want to know where family time is, I just look at a GMT. It's the only complication that matters.
Exactly. No, I agree. I think, and like Jason said, we want to be able to use that complication that's still relevant today, regardless of cell phones. And at the same time, you got to turn around and go train, and the ability to have a capable watch that can go in the water, sustain the elements is amazing.
The good thing about that watch as well, it's got a silicon hairspring, and so it's anti-magnetic and anti-shock. So that's why that particular watch, I mean, it was very understated, but it's because we came out last year just after we did the black ceramic with that blue dial, which was awesome. And we did the gray meteorite. We'd done it with orange, and we did the gray meteorite. And then that came out in December. So a lot of dark watches, which is very un-Zodiac in people's eyes. But if you were going to say the best watch technically, I think that this being the Pro Diver, but that being the same family, but the GMT, it just took it to the best possible watch we could have made. And then obviously this year we came out with our first chronograph in a long time that was awesome with 62 hours of power. So we're always looking to be better. But at the end of the day, it's got to be functional. And so Alex, I will work with you extensively to find the one watch that you like.
Thank you. I definitely need to.
You're my project.
Charge an hourly wage. You want to hear a funny story about that ceramic, the blue, the black ceramic bezel insert one that was at Worn and Wound, or Wind Up. So a guy I work with, he's a former naval officer, and he works, in government industry now. And he noticed he has a couple of first generation Christopher Wards. He got in on Christopher Ward early. He loves him. He gets the magazine they send out, all that stuff. And he was asking me one day, he's like, hey, do you know how to adjust a bracelet? I'm like, yeah, he looked at it. I said, maybe there's a link missing or whatever. And he didn't know you had to micro adjust. Well, this micro adjust I showed him, he's like, oh man, my watch fits now. It led in this whole conversation about watches. Like, so what do you have on? And I had on my 9209. And so I'm telling him all this stuff. And then he knew I went to Wind Up. I came back and he's like, so what was going on? I'm like, oh man, there's this really freaking cool ceramic bezel, vanilla strap smelling watch. It's awesome. I said, the dial's dark, but it's like deep ocean blue. So I showed him. So he goes home, and because his kids are all grown up, so it's just him and his wife. And he mentions this watch to his wife, just happenstance, like in conversation. She bought him that for Christmas.
Yeah, man, that's a keeper. We're right there.
Yeah, that's a keeper.
He comes to work because he's like, Jason, my wife bought me the Zodiac.
Love it.
And I'm like, really? And he didn't know, or he didn't remember that the strap smelled like vanilla. And he's like, I've been smelling vanilla. I'm like, that's your watch strap, man. That's
nice. It's better than it's better than wrist cheese, where you have not into another podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's for sure. But
hey, Mike, real quick, for those of you that people at home that don't know, give us a little background about yourself and how you ended up in this role with Zodiac, and then we can move into some other stuff after that. But I think it's important for people to know.
Sure. Way back when, I was going to be a teacher, had a nasty car crash, and that pushed me to travel for one more year. And that was the year that changed my life. I went into just have 6 months at sea. So not like yourselves or any of the service people that are out there. I worked on a cruise ship as a 21-year-old guy just to get it out of my system before doing normality. And I ended up finding a new life. The whole world opened. So I can only imagine the things that you might have seen out on cruise. But my cruise was a bit different. But it also was like, I've got this second chance to live. I shouldn't have survived. I came out the window of a car, but I'm like, let's just live it to the best of my ability. I ended up meeting a girl, the whole story about when you travel, and I moved to America. But to stay with her, from the job I was doing to be able to stay with her, I pivoted and I started to work for a company that was owned by LVMH, and they were a cruise promotion company who would tell people where to shop and what to buy ashore. And they had all kinds of crap. But they also had a lot of cool things like diamonds, but more than anything, it had watches. And so I started to understand the stories and the nuances. My first watch was a Fossil. My wrist always had something on it, but it was never expensive. You go through Storm watches if you're a UK guy, or you then go to the Nike sports watches, and it was always bigger and it had the great numerals. But when I started to promote them, the nuances of the stories and the mechanics of it all just made me fall in love with watches. And ended up buying a Tag Heuer Carrera, 3-hander on a bracelet. Wish I'd not sold it, but I did. But it ended up did that job for a couple of years and actually got quite good at it, to the point where I was asked, when moving to America for this particular relationship, would I start working for this one watch company? And it was a tiny company. And it probably still is quite small, but at the time, it was the best education for learning. It was a company called Ernst Benz, and my job was business development. It was basically a made-up title. We had a small amount of people who would want to buy the watches, but it was a 47 millimeter, mostly a chronograph collection. It's old Swiss guy that sold the brand to an American guy, and then the story continued. But the designs were great. But it was all about me understanding at that point what the movements were, what the watch community likes, and you learned about concentric circles and in subdials, or the length of a hand and what it mattered, or how a hand would cup the particular level of where the date would be on a moon phase. Well, there were so many things that I was learning which I'd never even conceived in my head. And I did that for a few years and ended up making quite a big difference to that company, which I was very proud of. And then a few years into that career, I met the English brothers who owned Bremont. And that was massively pivotal in my life. I was an Englishman in America who was doing things in the Swiss industry. And there in front of me in Switzerland were these two gentlemen who I'd just read about, who were English gents bringing an English watch brand back to an industry which was full of just Swiss brands, where I've always been a big believer that it's a world's industry, not a Swiss, even though I work for Zodiac. But what I said to them was, if you could help me with Ernst Benz, I'd love to help you with Bremont in our native countries. And it ended up being that I just fell in love with that story. Their inspiration of their dad and flying and vintage instrumentation, and how, when you go into any type of military environment, when you see those instruments they're for function, but in the end they have a natural beauty, and they were putting that into their watches, and they were leaving a legacy for their dad, and it was all very emotive, as you can see through it all. But I did almost a decade for those guys, and ended up making quite a big difference for that as well. But after so long, I'm sure you can find out with any career, you can be like, actually, you know what? I've not got any room for anything else but watches, or whatever career you choose. I'm done. And at that time, I'd met my now wife, which is not the original relationship that I moved to America for. We had a baby and another one on the way. And it ended up being the best decision ever, and also a tough decision as well, because I didn't want to leave, but I knew there was no room for anything else. And when I did quit, I have no rhyme or reason to be embarrassed, but it was really, really hard for me. And I think for a couple of years, you kind of figure out where you sit when you've only had that one thing. And not comparing to anything in military, but when you are doing one thing for so long, you try and find yourself in a normal world. I tried all types of different things. I tried different types of brands, but in the end, my skill set is building brands and finding the story within the brand and making it maybe more palatable for a different audience. And so I was consulting for a few different companies when I'd moved back to England after COVID. And one company called me, which is Zodiac, and they said, "Oh, we saw you have a Zodiac watch. We know you live in Dallas," which I wasn't before we moved to England. "Would you come in and give us a little bit of advice?" And I'm like, "I can't. I've moved to England." And they said, "Well, can we just chat for an hour a day or an hour a week, just to kind of bounce some ideas off? We'd send you some money or send you watches." I'm like, "Send me watches. I love my watches." And that hour of the week became the best part of my entire week. And in the end, my wife hadn't quite assimilated to living away from the US. And the more and more that I talked to the Zodiac team, the more I realized, not any kind of disrespect to them, but I was like, do you really understand what you've got? You've got 140 years of history. You've got this incredible iconography. You've got your own movement house. You've got a price point that's untouchable. It wouldn't take much to put it together to set it on its path to where we think it's now going to go. And so 6 months later, I packed up the dogs and the wife and the family, and we moved back to North Dallas. And I don't know if I've ever enjoyed myself as much. And I think if you take that story into a very, very quick sentence, it's, you can only find who you are once you've gone through some things. And I don't know, it could be good or for bad. It could be luxury watches or not. But, we've all got our own journey. And I don't know if I could do what I'm doing now or speak like I do now if it wasn't for what I'd learned through Ernst Benz, Bremont, and the time away from watches. But I do know that this has got a chance to mean something, not because of watches or luxury or money, but because this name stood for something. And I think we can carry that legacy on. So that's, in a nutshell, where I am today.
Pretty awesome.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
It's interesting because it's, I don't use this term very often, but I'm pretty sure Alex can back it up. So the military, you have units and everything breaks down all the way to like a fire team and all the way up, right? So, but you always in every organization have what we call a glue guy, right? Mm-hmm. And you have them at different pay grades, right? So it's always great to have one that's an officer, like high up, right? That can see the forest through the trees. They can see it, right? They can see what's going on over here and how that could benefit over here. And if you bring them together and you put them together, blah, blah, blah. It's always nice when you have them at different levels. And that's what I've always kind of felt that, me and Alex have talked about it. That's what you are. You are like a high level glue guy because you can see the forest.
Did you say blue guy?
Glue guy.
Glue. Oh yeah.
You bring people together and get them together and stick it together, and then it makes a usable product, right?
I like that.
And that's a sports term. Like sometimes you have people on teams that are glue guys, and they just do a little bit of everything. They're good at one really good thing, but they can speak other people's languages too, so they can get the contracts person to talk to the engineer and bring them together and get them to see how they can help each other, kind of thing. And I think it's paying dividends.
I don't know if I've ever thought of it in any kind of way. That's the best thing I could have been called, and it's glue.
Yeah,
I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's the reason why people eat it. I mean, some kids do. But anyway,
I had a meeting last night with our Australian team. We just started to work with Time and Tide, which is like the Australian version of Hodinkee and Worn and Wound.
Yeah,
and we were talking to their PR team, and I said, I'm just gonna tell you the story of Zodiac, and then we can maybe have some discussions. And at the end of it, they goes, "Wow, you really love what you're doing." And I'm like, I didn't care if I was speaking to 1,000 people or one person. I want that one person or that team on the screen to know what this brand has. And so, I love that you've thought that way, because we had sales, PR, media. But I think what we always try to do, I think we do this a lot with the watch industry, is we take the snippets. So what Zodiac for the last few years, they do color really well. Or what does Omega do? Oh, they've got the Speedy, and they went to the moon. Or Breitland's got the Navitimer. There's so much more around every one of the brands, and so I've tried to do with all the brands is to let people know that there's more than just what you first see. And Bremont had a massive thing with that, because the brand started because their father passed away, and the sons wanted to leave a legacy, through his memory, but also what he taught them. But also what people sometimes kind of misconstrued, and we think we did it on a former podcast, Jason, was the impression was it was all marketing. But if you then step back and understand what they do, or even on the military side, a third of Bremont's business are military squadron watches, because boys care about obviously that part of the world. But with Zodiac, it was always, I think a bit of its downfall was the fact that it didn't go out of business when the quartz crisis happened. So many brands hit rock bottom and just were gone. But Zodiac in the late 70s fought it and were the first electronic watch to come out. They had quartz watches, but the Collab family, who started the brand and had it for a century, said, it's not for us. It's gone. So the team who had it in the 80s and then the team who had it in the 90s just had no idea how to keep that going. So for good or for bad, it never went out of business. But through different ownership, including the Fossil Group, people forgot very quickly what the name meant. And so that's, long story short, again, what we're doing now is going back to go forward.
It was probably like a perfect storm of, as the information age is progressing, it's easy to get forgotten about because you don't have a voice out there talking about it, right? So you have like this weird 100%. Graph where information's going up and then the story's not going out, and there's a big gap there, like a big delta.
Yeah. A huge gap. And I mean, even to the point of, the vintage Zodiac collectors had not spoken to anybody from the Zodiac team currently because they didn't like some of the quartz fashion style watches that were done in the early 2000s. And I got it, but no one reached out, not in a nasty way. It's just they kept on going and going, and different people were trying to get it back. But as soon as you have that one conversation on social media or through email, you're like, we know we want this to matter again. Have a look at what it is, and then you can bring those two communities together. Well, there's way more than that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Older than me.
Yeah, no, it reminds me, the military has this thing called lessons learned, and everything that we do, we record what was supposed to happen, what happened, and what we learned of the differences between those. And we have that information in one single space. The problem is sometimes, like you were saying, a lot of people know what worked before, but then they don't reach out to find that information. Yeah. And then it takes someone at some point to say, hey, by the way, this works. and continue to move forward with the right thing. And I think it's like you were saying, it reminded me of that,
Well, it's amazing how much similarities we've got, considering, you will work with the environments you do and I do in mine. But if you learn the basic lessons of life, respect, information, communication, it will all get to the top. We've still got a long way to go, but, to go to watches now, I mean, if that's okay, Jason, we've released a few different watches where a lot of people are going, hold on, what's going on this year? Like, we started the year off with a watch with flies on the dial. That we
pretty cool.
With, Rowing Blazers and Harry's Bar in Paris. And then the one after that was all the colors of the rainbow with a skeleton dial. And no one understood that. But then, those two different things made people understand that we understand partnerships, but we also wanted people to see us. And you can take us for any other way. That rainbow watch was nuts because I would present it to stores or to individuals and no one wanted to like it. But then they picked it up and went, crap, you're doing it right. Here's my credit card. Which is good. It's good in the end.
It is good. It is good. And the legibility on it is amazing because it's one of the things that a lot of times people complain about skeleton watches. And I remember when you first posted the picture of it, and I think one of the pictures that you posted, there was a sun behind it and you can see the sun through it. And I remember seeing it and I was like, and I can still tell the time. That's crazy.
Awesome. So we had some big old chats about this, and I was one of the first people to say I really don't like it when it was on the paper because it didn't have the depth. I couldn't see what we were doing. Then we got the first movement in. The movement was really good, and we've used it in the past. And it had been sold from STP to some other companies, but it wasn't executed the way that we now did it. The thing that helped it is that we had two stories, the color on the front and the back. And we also had that beautiful metallic blue inner ring that had the numerals with loom on it. So all of it just tied together so well. But more than anything for me is that since we bought STP and since we've used STP, it's always been a bit of an enigma to the community. And if for any of your listeners or viewers who are out there, STP we bought, Fossil Group bought it for Fossil Swiss, for some Armani watches, for Burberry when we own that, and then some for Zodiac. But for the main part, we were buying in ETA, Solita, Soprod movements because it was easy and we knew we could trust them. And STP, design-wise, is still like it is today, but the components weren't brilliant. And they've got better and better to now we're there. And as we go into next year, those components become a little bit more luxurious, or should we say higher quality. And that's what's going to push the brand. And the skeleton watch might not have been bells and whistles. It's not a genre to see the beautiful skeletonized movement, but it was a three-hander that we deconstructed and made it look great. Yeah. But what it did is that people looked in and went, okay, it looks good. So when you've got a closed case back dive watch, they know they've got something in there they can trust. So that was grand. And then obviously, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off.
And then I was going to say, then the watch straight after that was the Seacron, which made everyone go, oh, God, you're going back to the 60s and you understand what the community might want. So it's good.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's important for, for our listeners to hear that part about the STP movement, right? Because I've heard stuff from, my fellow watch enthusiast buddies about the movements. But I think most of us military people know, like, you'll have an F-18A, you'll have an F-18 Bravo, you'll have an F-18 Charlie, and so on, right? And I'm pretty sure it's the same way in the Army for Alex, right? Like, you'll have an iteration of something, they do improvements, and that becomes the next iteration.
That's it, yeah.
And that becomes the next iteration. So for, I hear a lot of people, and I talk to them like, well, the STP movement, like, yeah, but it's the first iteration of the STP movement. They just got it. They're just doing stuff with it. They have to.
But also, if you look at the price points of the original STP, they reflected the quality maybe of the inside. Yeah, but that's a bit different now.
Yeah. So I think that's just cool for us to hear it from you, especially the rest of the community that are, military or veterans and or watch enthusiasts, because the movement's only going to get better over time. It's just going to get better.
And it starts,
eventually be.
It starts this year. It's we've got the STP 1-11, which is in everything. That's three-hander, but we use Salita, the SW200 in our Pro Diver because it's got the silicon hairspring. So we're going to be moving, and this is very, very early. So don't share this out there, people. But we've got some things that will be improved on the inside, which mean we don't need to use Salita anymore. And that will also be replicated in other movements going into next year as well. So we know that we have to get better. But like I said, for $895 where we start to really $1595 as an average price point, we're giving you a great watch, but we want it to be better, but we don't want the prices to go up because it just suits the Zodiac name.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, speaking of better, we have some special stuff we'd like to share with everybody and have you talk about.
Oh, okay.
So if you're ready.
Before you show any pictures, because we're recording this before July 10th, so this is everyone's gone through 4th of July, which is always very weird for an Englishman to do this whilst in this country, but I get all of the abuse, man. I'm telling you.
Do it in Boston one year. Brutal.
Oh, brutal. I'll sit on the side with a nice cup of tea and just
love it.
Yeah. But we did the Seacron, which was awesome, and then recently we came out with the Gulf, and we did the Sea Foam. And so, as we're recording this, we haven't released this watch yet, but as Jason and Alex are putting it out there, we're really happy and proud to kind of bring a new audience to Zodiac, because we are very much utilitarian in its core, but then the colors can mean anything to anybody. Case in point, like the watermelon or even the skeletonized rainbow watch. But we think also sometimes you want to soften it a little bit to bring a new audience, and this can be for guys or for girls. And we were very proud to introduce the new white ceramic Super Seawolf compression line. If you got a picture there, Jason. There we go. So this is going to have 3 different colorways. The first one here, and you might see the colorway, the Bakelite blue, which is from the original Seawolf from the 60s. And then obviously we've got a core piece now, but we've kind of put it into the inner track at that midnight blue dial. And then we've got this wonderful outer white ceramic case. And it's the same watch you'd find in terms of like on Jason's wrist, in terms of dimensions. It's 40 millimeters, STP 1-11 movement. But because it is a newer material or a newer concept, we're also going to chronometer certify this collection as well, which every watch is tested within chronometer specifications, but this one we're going to chronometer certify, which is huge. And it comes on the strap that we think best befits it. So if you see this one right now with that sky blue outer ring, the sky blue tropic strap's in there. I personally am going to be buying a dark blue tropic strap to match the dial. I think that'll make it more jeans and t-shirt for me. But if you can imagine having some nice white linen shirt sitting out there on a beach, supping on some cold and icy, this is a perfect watch for the summer. But we can see this on guys and girls, and it's just a really cool interpretation of color. What do you think of it, Alex?
I agree. I think I think you're right. That putting a dark blue strap on it, that's gonna be money right there.
And I got to tell you, in real life, I mean, these were some of the prototype, non-working prototype pictures. I've got the finished article. The loom is unbelievable. But it's just the soft edges of white ceramic that's just kind of softened it a little bit. But it's just a great presence on the wrist. And we've got 2 of the colors. So if you want to move on there, there, Jason, we can show. This is the one that everyone picks up first. It's the white ceramic interpretation of our watermelon watch. And it is just nothing but fun. I think when I look at the collection, and you'll see the third one in a second, this is the one that always your eye will go to. And I think this is the one that a lot of the ladies are going to buy more than anything. But again, we have no way or rhyme or reason to dictate that you might buy it or I might not. It's all about personality choices. But this is probably the most fun one in the collection out of the 3. And it's just amazing that we've carried on some of that watermelon coloring now in a few different iterations. But for me, this is ultimate white ceramic Zodiac. I think we do orange better than just about any other brand. And this one, we just poured the whole can of paint all over it and just went to town. And the dial is a lot lighter in real life than you'd see here. So it's got lovely contrast against the very white markers and numerals. But the lume is just killer. And you can see really good and really well on this picture, the sunburst finish on the dial. And it comes with a really lovely orange tropic strap. But they're the 3 white ceramics, and under $2,000. This is limited quantity, not limited edition. So it might blow through it, and we might need to make it again. But as a whole, for us to build this collection, I think it's a really good addition to the Zodiac range, especially the time of year on July 10th. So, what do you think about it, Jason?
I dig it. There's a little, as I have more experience with watches now, it's the little things I pick up on, right? So I'm pretty sure Alex will back me up on this. So, the lume, the white indices, the white hands, but the fact that this looks like a slightly reflective chapter ring around here above the minute track, right? I know that's going to bounce. I know that's going to bounce the lume reflection off, right? And then, I want to see how the lume pip works with the lume here, Alex. I don't know.
Mate,
you might get a little bit.
You'll love it.
Yeah, I like the little effect here, the Zodiac logo on the crown. And I think the white, how it kind of hides the edges of the bezel is cool.
Yeah, like I said, it softens it so nicely.
Yeah. It's almost like a hidden detail. Like to the average person walking by, they might notice the color, but you've already noticed there's like an additional design element that's not so obvious.
Yeah.
When you wear it. It's they're all pretty sweet.
Well, this is the start of. Sorry, Alex.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. You can go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say one other thing. So this watch right here, this white one. Oh, go ahead.
That's yours. That's the one you like.
And let me tell you why. So back in the day, you could only wear like a black, gold, or silver watch in uniform, right? They've relaxed the uniform restrictions, but we would always, Alex, I'm pretty sure it's probably different when you're out in the field, but when you're in a ship, you can only bring so much stuff with you. But when you went on Liberty, you'd always they tell you not to be too American in your dress. So sometimes people would do stuff like shoes or whatever. But like this right here, like if you're lucky enough to go down to the Caribbean, and like one time we pulled into St. Martin for a regatta, we were the host ship. When you said linen shirt, I thought, man, if I had this in '97 when I was in St. Martin, sitting in the water, drinking a
flamingo shirt doesn't look too bad now, does it?
Exactly.
Perfect watch. And then when you said dark blue strap, I was like, and you know what? I could put it on a dark blue strap and I could wear it to a meeting. And it's just pure class, but that's just me.
Well, I've got the collection with me. I'll be posting pictures today, July 10th, and throughout the rest of the week. So let me know what you think, your audience. And, I think this is going to be one of those watches which is very accessible and attainable for, like I said, for everybody. It might not be everybody's cup of tea as well, but I think what we've done really well here is that we've got a chance to showcase our capabilities. And by chronometer certifying it, we've also kind of appeased the watch people to make them understand that we do care about how strong it is on the inside. But it also has a brother or a sister variation in the steel collection. So if you like the colors, you want it to be a little bit more traditional. There's the watermelon, there's the blue, and there's also the creamsicle, which is within the compression range. But this just adds so much color and vibrancy. We're really excited for it. And there's more colors to come this year. But this is definitely the brightest of the bunch.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things that you pick up on it real quick with really every watch from Zodiac, but this ones are very, very in your face is that a lot of times you see color in watches that is just thrown there, but you see how the details in color will merge all of it together and will connect it all of it together. Whether whether it was the minute hand, the same color as the strap and the outer ring and the dial, and connecting it all together, or whether it was in the bezel, the markings with the crimsicle being orange in order to connect that, and that connection all throughout is spot on.
Yeah, I'm glad. And one thing as well, picking up on that, which I like from Ryan, the designer, is that we actually have mint loom in the watermelon and the orange, but the blue watch has blue loom. So at nighttime, it's the only one that's a little bit different, which I think is really cool. So
that is cool. That is.
It bothers me because I'm saving up for a Seacron. I've been, anyways.
You're back to Alex's problem from the start of the podcast.
Another topic.
But,
go ahead, Alex. Sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, with the chronometer certification, it also merges with what people like about summary watch with what watch enthusiasts like about a watch that is thought out and well done. So I think it's
we don't chronometer certify everything, but in certain stories and certain materials, we just thought it was important to do that extra expense that we do not pass on. I mean, every certificate is, they can only do a certain amount of watches a day. So it's very hard to do it. It's time consuming, but for certain materials, we want people to understand that we do care. So it's just above and beyond. Maybe it'll never get noticed, but I think people like you might notice it.
For sure.
But do you have any questions for, not related to the new cool ceramic releases, Alex, for Mike?
No, I know you had some questions, so I'll let you jump in first.
Well, I mean, the only question I really have, because I feel like this could take off on its own for like 15 minutes and get us to an hour, which we care about our listeners and Mike's personal life. So we're trying to keep the interview to an hour for the sake of brevity. But, Alex and I have been wondering, because I know you did the Houdini collab a while back, and that was really before I really knew. I was kind of getting into watches, and that was like a catalyst for me, like to really throw myself into it. Right. Are there, and we don't need specifics, but are there any plans in the future to really focus some effort onto like the military heritage now that I feel that you've been on board and you've really grabbed the attention of the watch enthusiast community, right? Mm-hmm. Anything in the military heritage the lineup that you guys had before?
It's a difficult one. Right now we make, I think this year, if we do well, we'll finish about 15,000 watches, which is a drop in the ocean compared to, in the end of the 70s, Zodiac was making 250,000 watches. When Zodiac was at its height, the majority of the reason why was, in my opinion, is because of the military buying as many watches as it did. And we are still, as we've talked about, Jason, available in a couple of the PXs around the country. But it's a very small, kind of weird collection. With respect. And the reason why is the people who buy our watches or other brands, they look at things like Tag Heuer because they want to go quick. Yeah. And Zodiac, for a lot of people in the military, know it, but the buyers might not know the kinds of collection that we're building. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, when it was sold so well, there was only a few options. And so the military did what the military does, and they made that watch special either by carving certain scribes into it, names, locations, military numbers that are important to them. And that's how the military kind of connotations kind of took a life of its own. When you look at the squadron watches, even something like with Tudor, with the Marine Nationale, or you go further forward with what some of the Blue Angels or the Red Arrows might have done in the UK, like they're very obvious. The thing that I like with Bremont is they did the squadron watches, and that was a personal thing. But when you make such few watches like we do, how do you get it right? If you made an army watch, what is it going to look like? Is it going to have to be gunmetal gray? Is it, because everyone's own squadron or their own different division within each different military is very important to them. I mean, I've been given some challenge coins. I've seen some of the patches. I understand people's call signs are so personal. So the way that we would have to do it, in my eyes, to respect Zodiac and respect the military is to do a watch which is of that time of where it came from. If we were going to do a watch which is specific for certain squadrons and certain people, I think that would be a whole new division of business. And that would mean certain squadrons that maybe you've worked with, or, you've got to have a project lead, and that could be in any let. But what it's like when you get 50 guys together, which is the absolute minimum to start a conversation. 50 people are going to have 50 different opinions. So we would send 3 or 4 different options, and then it's about getting it right. And right now, Jason, you can see how I'm working at 1,000,000 miles an hour. We don't have 1,000,000 people to help us do it right. So what I would hope is that we've got a couple of watches that would respect its original DNA, and then the military could possibly understand that. And maybe there's more of a bigger collector community that would respect it because of how we're going as a brand. We have some that are doing that. I think the Seacron did it. I mean, to go off on a tangent, when we came out with that design, it's exactly the same specs as what the original Seacron was. And I was very lucky enough to find a picture of a guy from Vietnam taking a picture, and he had a photograph taken of him at that time. And on his wrist, he was wearing his original Seacron. So I reached out to the person who posted it. I said, hey, can we use that picture? We'd love to tell the story. And it was a guy in Norway who bought the watch from the original owner. And I was like, he might have passed away. He might have been certain. He goes, I'll ask him. I've still got his number. And so we reached out and we talked to the guy who was a Vietnam vet. He didn't even know the watch or the picture mattered, but it did. And so we've actually gifted him a watch as a way of saying thank you. But we've using that story to kind of say it mattered then, it matters now. And so you can have all the watermelon crazy white ceramics you like, but it came from a good place. So long story short, I'd love to do more, but I think we have to have a little bit more oomph behind the sales to get our team a little bit bigger. And we also need the military community to maybe understand where we are today, and then natural conversations can happen. I mean, I went to Tailhook in that was unbelievable.
Oh, sorry. I keep doing that. My apologies.
No, it's fine. I was just saying I went to Reno for the Tailhook convention, which was absolutely nuts, having the naval aviation guys, and anybody who was Air Force there, they just got absolutely destroyed by the pilots who were walking around. I learned what people wanted within their watches from that, and it was a great education. But I think Zodiac will probably have to grow a little bit more to do it right.
I was going to say that's what I think is so cool about, real quick, Alex, that 9209 is that it's a faithful recreation to the 53 skin driver. And I think that's what I know for a fact, that's what nailed it for me and T, that there was no it was a collab and there was no way to tell. It is like the biggest
we're doing that more and more. I mean, it's the same thing when I look at my soccer jerseys. My team is Aston Villa. Anybody out there who likes soccer? My team's awful mostly, but I love them. But everyone always talks about players, and I'm like, the only thing that matters is the patch on the front, not the name on the back. And that's what the watch brand does. It should say Zodiac because it reflects 140 years of history. So the limited editions, we try to go away from making it about them, even the crazy colorways, and that should just be hidden on the back, because the front of it should really scream 140 years of Zodiac. So especially the military stories.
I agree. And I think with the military also, there's a little bit of not knowing, right, with the new generation and a lot of the way the military shifted and stuff like that. And a lot of times, one of the things that I do in my podcast all the time is I keep telling the story of go to the PX, go online and find those watches. Because one of the things that I didn't know when I first started collecting, it was that those watches were found through AFES, our company that does the PXs and stuff. And you go online and they will take allocations and move them and just ship them to where you at. So it's advertised through online all the time. But I think a lot of times people don't know. A lot of people that I met, I tell them, hey, you can buy those watches through the PX or online, whether you're deployed or not, and you're going to get it. And a lot of times they don't know. And I think
a lot of the buyers that are being the PX would be very similarly, I say this with respect, driven, like a lot of the stores might be driven as well. So you can find like fashion stores. I mean, Fossil, that's what they do. They do $200 to $300 to $500 watches. And they think if you are a new customer to that world, $300 to $500 is a lot of money. So what are you going to get for that? You've got the options that are in the fashion world, or you can then go to Seiko and then you work your way up into anything you want. Then you're in this crazy rabbit hole. When you look into some of the military shops, you might have some more storied or some more mature buyers who are more educated. But as a whole, when you're first in the military, young family being on base, You might not have a ton of money, but you want a watch that looks good. And that's where sometimes there's not a ton of options because it's about who buys the watches. And so we have a military buying team here at the group, and then we will talk to the military, but they are still finding their way about what budgets are. As you say, it's an ever moving world. What I will say though, especially, Jason and yourself, Alex, anybody who's on this podcast or on your own, or if anyone sends any DMs to your inbox, shoot them my number, send them over to my Instagram. I'm more than happy to answer, even if it's just to help them find a certain watch. I think at this stage of our growth, I love the interaction, but also the more and more the word of mouth is respected, and people like Jason who have written brilliant reviews, we'd love to help. But in the end, what it would mean is that I can come out to maybe some of the bases or some of the areas where there's more military guys and do a presentation and show some watches, because tactility matters, and you can't really feel the bezel or hear the bezel unless you touch it. So I got to come out and see you more. So maybe this is just step one of a bigger journey into the military, starting with you and that question, Jason.
Yeah, that's definitely.
I'd shoot Alex a ticket and be like, get over here.
yeah, that's for sure.
Alex could fly Space A. You could fly Space A.
Yeah, I can fly anywhere.
Yeah, for free.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely, it's no, you're right. And I think that's part of it. Having that connection with the actual product is definitely a lot.
No, tactility always matters. It's the same with anything.
Yeah.
You can try on a jacket and you can buy it from Amazon, but you got to see how it feels on the shoulders, right?
Well, yeah, it's funny too that you bring that up, because me and Alex joke about that all the time, right? Because people are always like, "You want me to do the voice, Alex?" People are always like, "Military grade," right? So they always do that, and so you're like, that just means they went to the lowest bidder. That's not impressive. That's not impressive to us, right? But when me and Alex were talking about Zodiac, I'm like, no, man, both of them, the compression case and the skin diver, they're both really well made timepieces. Right. Yeah. And then when T shows his pictures of him using his, and other people show them that they're underwater, or whether it's Andy Man, or you can tell from our aspect, as far as being, me being a veteran and Alex still being active duty, I could tell Alex, by all means, go buy one. You could wear it, do whatever you're doing out in the field. That thing's going to take, it's going to take the pounding. You know what I mean? And I think that really matters when it goes back to tactility, because we will call BS real quick.
Oh, I know. Oh, I'm ready for some crap.
Yeah.
If
I think that the thing is at this price point as well is you want customers, no matter what you do, as hard wearing as your days might be, as you could bang it on a door going into your office, and you want it to last, right? But we also think at this price point, we want people to wear it. We know that we might not be everybody's first watch, but because it's got a decent price that's approachable, that you can have us as part of your collection. But we don't want it to be a box watch. We want someone to absolutely wear the heck out of it. And every scar, every bump, every lump matters. I'll tell you a quick story from that. I was in a store a few months ago, and this one guy came up to me and he says, my dad was on cruise and he bought a Seawolf back in the 70s for $80, and he loved it. And a couple of weeks after he bought it, he dropped it, and it had this massive dent in it, and he never fixed it because it didn't matter, because the watch still worked. And a few years after that, he dropped it, and it did it. He dropped it bad. I think he was on cruise still, but he destroyed it. And to the point where he put it in a drawer and he never looked at the watch again. He knew his son, as he got a little older, and he was alive now, and he was around. He knew his son liked watches, so he gave his son that watch. And his son went and got it fixed up and gave it back to his dad for Father's Day. And the dad went to the store and bought the new variation of Zodiac, so he had the new one. And the thing I like the most is he never took that first dent out of it because it mattered. So I'm all about that. That was a big story for me. It really resonated.
Yeah, the stories are something that it really what matters about watches and this type of collecting world is that it can last and bring stories across generations. And it's,
my two daughters, they're only 5 and 7, but they know the one watch that I wore when both of them were born and the watch I wore when I married their mum. So it's cool. Time matters. I mean, prices and money can be silly, but you could wear a flick flack watch, but if you wore it when it mattered at that time, it's got resonance. And that's, I think, at least you've got something of worth within Zodiac.
I mean, if it wasn't for the community, I mean, I guess me and Alex essentially created our own little community, but if it wasn't for the watch enthusiast community, Alex and I would have never met. And we've hit it off. Like we just get along, and we have that camaraderie of both being, you know, military, but also from the watches. And then, you know, the amount of respect I have for Alex for every time, because he's really knowledgeable, man. Like I would say out of the group, he's the knowledgeable guy of the group. And
I love that.
You know, it's the truth. And it's like, you know, and then we got to know, and it's just awesome because we can bring this stuff to whoever's listening and whoever's watching, and you know, show a side of Zodiac they may not have seen, and then, you know, help introduce people to the brand. And I think it's pretty awesome.
Oh, I hope so. I mean, thank you very much for letting me come on, and, you know, I've enjoyed what you guys have done individually, and now together it's like the tag team, you know, the Legion of Doom coming out of nowhere. You know?
We'll wear some face makeup next interview.
Absolutely. Yeah. But it's, I'll also just say, and I'm sure you get it said a lot, but thank you for all you've done professionally in your world. And it means a lot, especially for someone who's not from this country, to meet people like you. I'm very proud to live here because of people like you, and for everybody who listens. So for all you've done for my watch journey with Zodiac, Jason, and now the new friendship with you, Alex, thank you. And I can't wait for it to grow.
Definitely. And, you know, one thing I want to say, Mike, is, you know, I heard this early from DC Vintage Watches. He says always buy the seller, don't buy the product, right? And I think one of the things that is bringing the community back into Zodiac is they see you as the seller, so they're buying you, you know, because it's definitely a great addition to Zodiac. So we appreciate it.
Thanks. It's been one heck of a journey, and it's just getting started. But as long as people look at it and respect it, and I've done my job, and then I'll maybe kick people at the backside here and make sure you're better as well. So
yeah.
Get out of the boardroom. Yeah. Well, we thank you for your time, Mike, and like everyone we have on for an interview, open invitation. If you ever want to come on live stream one day and just shoot the stuff about watches, you don't got to give a Zodiac spiel unless you want to. But we talk about funny topics like the Space Force watch. If you haven't had a chance to watch that one, I highly invite you to watch about the Space Force watch. That's Alex's personal favorite. Speaking of tag team, but we thank you for your time, and thank you for coming with us on this little journey.
Absolute pleasure. Alex? Take care, gents.
Take care.
Have a nice night, everybody.
Have a nice night.